All right, so for the rest of the semester, this will be the last unit that we take on. We're doing intellectual property law this week. I'll lecture today, and then Thursday we'll have some brief discussion, maybe half a class discussion. And then the second half of class, I'm going to talk about your final exam project some more. What I'll do is I'll just ask y'all for volunteers, and if you don't want to volunteer, I'll get an example from somewhere else, but we'll just pull up what you turned in and we'll just kind of look at it and say, this is what you would need to do to finish it out. You know, these are the things maybe that you're missing, or this is where I would add this or that. And I'll offer that we'll do that for everybody if you want to do it. If you don't want to do it, I'm not going to pull your work up in front of everybody if you don't want to, but I think that will be a good use of our time to kind of answer your questions. And then I suppose if we do have class that Tuesday after Thanksgiving, which y'all are telling me we do, maybe some do, some don't. Well, I was thinking about coming just to make myself available in case anybody wanted to talk about their project. So I think I'll do that for that last Tuesday. But that's where we are. So there's no discussion question for this week. So we're finished on those. But remember, I'm going to go back and make sure, look at which ones you did. If you answered every discussion question, you get a 100 for the discussion grade. That is easy 100 for you to get. And so you still got some time to do that. So please make sure, go back and look and make sure you answered all those. If you have any questions at this point about anything, now would be the time to ask them. I don't mean like right this second, but between now and the time that your things are due. When did we say your final exam project was due? Friday, December, is that a first? Let me see. I probably need to get that out to y'all too, just in writing somewhere if I hadn't already. Yeah, Friday, December 1st at midnight is what we'll say to that. And then, so that's kind of where we are. So Des, see me after class and I'll fill you in on that. All right, if we don't have any questions, then let's start with intellectual property law. So this is, I'm sorry, before I start, you do have an assignment this week. Your assignment is to Google an example of one of the intellectual property categories that we talk about today. You're going to Google where there's been a lawsuit about copyright or trademark or patent, and you will just you'll say who the parties are, what the dispute was, what the outcome was. It's listed in your assignment. Again, this should be a easy 100 assignment for you. So do that, and then on Thursday, the first part of class when we do discussion, we're going to talk about each of your examples. You'll say, this was my example was the blurred lines case. This is what it was about. This is what happened. And I mean, we're not doing deep dives, people. We're just talking about read a news article about a copyright dispute and just tell us what it was about. I mean, this is real. Don't overthink it. But we'll use half the class on Thursday to then kind of talk about your examples, and that'll help illustrate, I think, in a good way what we're talking about today. So that is your assignment. There's no quiz this week, only an assignment. All right. So even though your assignment is due Monday, the actual turning in the writing of it, you need to have it done by Thursday so you can talk about it. But you don't have to turn it in until Monday. It's up to y'all. All right, so we are discussing intellectual property today, and sort of the policy basis behind intellectual property law is that we want to reward creativity. We want to reward people's work, their own work product. We want to reward individual ideas, ingenuity. We want to respect, reward, and protect the creative process, so that if you come up with something, a design, anything artistic, written work, anything that's a product of your own creativity or your own mind or your own work, the law will protect that from other people stealing it from you, using it without your permission, or ripping it off in one way or another. And there are different categories of intellectual property depending on what it is. So the first one I want to talk about is trademark. A trademark is, what you think about the Coca-Cola mark or their logo. Is what I'm trying to say. I see on Susie's computer an apple. That'd be an example of a trademark. The little apple with the bite out of it. Actually, I see a bunch of apples with bites out of it as I look around the room this morning. So that would be an example. Google, we all recognize the Google trademark. Something that you can it can be words, but it could also be just a design without a word, like that apple. We would all recognize the Delta logo. It doesn't have the word Delta on it. Mercedes-Benz, we all recognize the Benz logo. It doesn't say Mercedes-Benz, but when we see it, we know what that is. Those are all trademarks. You could also trademark a slogan like "Just Do It" for Nike, "Finger Licking Good" for Kentucky Fried Chicken. You can also trademark a slogan. So the protection that trademarks get is on a little bit of a sliding scale, and I'm skipping for a second in your outline under trademarks and related property. Look at section D, distinctiveness of the mark. That's where I'm going first, and then I'm going to jump back to the beginning of the outline, but I want to go to distinctiveness first. So it's sort of a sliding scale on the degree of protection that the law allows a trademark. The more original, the more distinctive, the more associated it is with that product or company, the more protection that it's going to get. The more generic it is, the less likely it is to be protected. So we also, if you think about it, trademarks, it's impossible for us to it's impossible for the law to apply a formula to trademark. Because we're going to have to look at it and see it or read it to determine how original it is or how much we associate it with a certain product or company. So there's not like a bright line test. It's going to be a case-by-case basis. But generally speaking, the more original, the more distinctive, the more associated it is with that product or company, the more protection it'll get. So if we're looking on that sliding scale, let's start at the top. The trademarks that enjoy the most protection are ones that are called fanciful, arbitrary. I'm sorry, let's stick with fanciful for a second. A fanciful trademark has no independent meaning. All right, Google is probably in the dictionary now. It might have independent meaning, but when Google started, the word Google is a made-up word. Okay. It doesn't describe any goods or services. It's the trademark Exxon. It's not a word that has no independent meaning. It doesn't describe necessarily the good or the service that they sell. Rolex. The word Rolex connotes a watch to us now, but at the time it was chosen as the name of that company, it was not synonymous with watches. It doesn't have any independent meaning. So the more individual it is, the more protection it's going to get. Those are fanciful trademarks. The next level down from fanciful would be an arbitrary trademark. In an arbitrary trademark, the word does have a common meaning. So whereas we said Rolex, that's not a word, an arbitrary trademark would have a meaning independent of the product or service or company. It's just that it has now been associated with that company, product, or thing. An example of that would be Dove soap. Dove is a word. The bird dove has nothing to do with soap. Okay, so it does have independent meaning, but it's not related to the good or service. Apple computer. Apple has no connection with technology. It's fruit on a tree. But it does have independent meaning. Target, Delta. Those are examples of arbitrary trademarks. Some company just picked this word to associate with their company, not because it describes their product, just because that's the word they wanted to pick to associate with their company. So not quite as much protection as fanciful, but still pretty protected. The next one down would be a suggestive trademark. So a suggestive trademark, the word, the nature of the product, the trademark is suggestive of the product or service or company. All right, so like Netflix. That's not an independent word, but it is suggestive of the word flicks, movies, and net being internet, being able to watch movies on, although, Netflix started with ordering DVDs. Y'all are probably too young to remember that. I don't know. Maybe not. Yeah. You remember Blockbuster? Good times. Had to actually get in the car and drive to the store to rent a video. We've come a long way. So those are suggestive trademarks. Airbus. That's, the name of an airplane. So that certainly is suggestive of it. So again, those enjoy more protection than something that's generic. So if we're going down the scale, so we start at the top with fanciful, then arbitrary, then suggestive. Now we're getting down toward the bottom of the scale, descriptive marks. They're generally not protected. Like if I tried to trademark cold and creamy for ice cream, that's getting to be a little bit too general to enjoy protection. But they still could. So something like Sharp for the TVs. Sharp is a pretty common word, but it could be trademarked for the TV, the tech company, whatever it is they make these days, because it's been associated with them so long. We generally, well, I'll say that in just a second when we get to generic. Holiday Inn. The words holiday and inn are pretty common words. When you put them together, that becomes a little bit more unique, I would say. And so you can see where that might be more worthy of protection under the law. And then if we get to the very bottom of the scale, you get generic words. And it is very difficult to trademark something that's generic. I couldn't trademark the word donut. I couldn't trademark the word coffee. I'd need to combine it probably in some way, or the word clock. So it's not a thing where somebody can just race and go out and register generic, ordinary meaning words to where other people can't use them without permission. And that a generic word does not, you think about the policy behind intellectual property that I talked about at the beginning. We want to reward creativity. We want to protect people's ideas. If I tried to trademark the word coffee, that's not a product of my creativity or work or anything like that. So it would follow that the law doesn't extend much trademark protection to generic things. Did you have a question, Jesse? Well, how did Apple get to where they did that? If they were trying to trademark the word Apple itself without it being attached to their computers, they wouldn't be able to do that. But because they associated it with their computer brand, they were able to do that. So Apple Computers is what it is. So, for example, they could not sue Tom's Apple stand. Or if I named my Apple stand on the side of Highway 27 Apple, they couldn't do anything to me about that. Now, if I use their logo, Apple apples, then that's going to get me in trouble. But just by using the word, not necessarily. Yes. Hmm. No, I do not think that's the question. Is if he opened up Purple Donut, would Golden Donut be able to come after him? I don't think so. And again, if you have a generic word, but you've associated it with a product, it's not as generic anymore. When I get down to the generic, I'm saying I can't just go out and trademark ordinary words without some sort of meaning attached to it that's not associated with what it is, if that makes sense. So Apple, yes, is an extremely generic word. I couldn't trademark the word Apple, but I could trademark Apple computers or Apple donuts. Even Apple donuts, that might be that feels a little generic too. So we can't just go around trademarking random words. But if they've acquired an independent meaning because of their association with a product service company, then that could be trademarkable for sure. All right, so that's kind of how that works. So your outline talks about if a word has acquired a secondary meaning. So I think that's a good way of looking at it. A descriptive term like north or south or west, that's not going to be, you can't trademark that until it acquires a secondary meaning, like we were talking about with Apple. The word Apple itself can't trademark. It has acquired a secondary meaning when we talk about Apple computer that we associate with that. And that's going to depend on things like, how widely it's advertised, how extensively well known is it. It might be difficult for me to trademark something that is well known in Columbus, but not well known anywhere in the world outside of Columbus. Or I guess I don't need to say the world, the United States. Intellectual property law would be specific to the country that you're in. So whether something acquires a secondary meaning would depend on a lot of different factors. I guess is what I'm trying to say. All right, so trademarks are protected. So let's go back to ways, let's start back at the top and talk about ways that a trademark could be violated or your rights to your trademark could be infringed upon. One of them is trademark dilution. So this is not copying a trademark, like counterfeiting goods or anything like that. We're going to get to that in a second. That is a violation of intellectual property law. But dilution occurs, and I'm saying dilution, dilution, not like delusion, or I want to make sure my pronunciation is correct so you're following me. That occurs when somebody uses something that's close to the trademark or the name, and it blurs the lines between whether or not that's associated with the original trademark or not. Or does it weaken the distinctiveness of the mark? Does it make it less distinctive or less individual? So y'all will see this when you do your research into trademark dilution. But there was a Korean chicken company that it was named Louis Vuitton Duck. And it's a play on Korean words of which don't speak Korean, so I couldn't tell you what exactly it had to do, but it has something to do, it's a play on words that has to do with chicken there or something like that. But they were using the Louis Vuitton, something that looks sort of like the Louis Vuitton logo, and Louis Vuitton sued them. And their defense was, well, first of all, we sell chicken. We're not selling luxury clothing. And it's not exactly, we're not using the word Louis Vuitton, it was Louis Vuitton duck. I think ton duck or ton duc, however you would say it, means chicken or has something to do with chicken in Korean. There's probably people that know Korean watching this that are laughing at me, and I would deserve it. And so they won, Louis Vuitton won. And so then the restaurant changed their name. It was still Louis Vuitton duck, but they, instead of 3 words like Louis Vuitton duck, it was like Louis something and then ton duck, or they just had the same spelling, but they rearranged the words or something like that. And then so they got sued again and they lost again. And so there, if you looked at that story, really what sunk them was that they were using an LV that looked a lot like the Louis Vuitton logo, because it doesn't mean that Louis Vuitton is pretty distinctive. Let me use a different example. Let's say that this is a real case too. I think there was a harmonica named Ferrari harmonicas, and maybe let's just say, for example, that the inventor of that harmonica or the owner of that harmonica company's last name was Ferrari, and he wanted to be Ferrari harmonicas because that's his name. And if Ferrari, the car maker, sued him for trademark dilution, it wouldn't be copying the trademark. It's just basically the same name. And his defense would be, well, that doesn't, I make harmonicas, they make high performance sports cars. How is that in any way, how does that create confusion or blur the lines or weaken their product? And I don't remember off the top of my head what happened in that case. I want to say maybe that he was able to use the word Ferrari because it was so unrelated to the Ferrari cars. Now, again, if he had been, I think he would have gotten in trouble if he had used a fast car as part of his logo on his harmonicas. If he's trying to piggyback, that's the word I'm looking for. If he's trying to piggyback off of the Ferrari car name and vibe and what they've built up, then that's going to be more trademark dilution. If you're trying to use that hint to promote your own business, then you're more likely to get in trouble. I think that if my last name is Ferrari and I wanted to open Ferrari's Apple stand on Highway 27, I don't think that in any way is going to dilute the trademark of Ferrari, the car brand. There's no relation between our businesses. I'm local and not global. I'd have a lot of good defenses to that. So again, dilution is not copying. That's going to be infringement. We're going to get to that in a minute. Dilution is weakening, blurring the lines, impairing the trademark. Here's an example. Let's say that I am in Atlanta and I open a strip club named Ferrari Strip Club. That has nothing to do with the cars. Again, I don't use any fast car imagery. I'm not piggybacking at all. My logo is nothing like theirs, but they might have an argument that I am weakening their trademark because I've got a strip club and that is inconsistent with their luxury, high-end, high-performance sports car brand. I'm tarnishing that with putting that name on a strip club. So even though I'm only in Atlanta, even though I am in a completely different industry, that still might be dilution because they could make a pretty good argument that I'm weakening or tarnishing their brand, if that makes sense. If Tiffany and Company sued me because I was running a Tiffany and Company cocaine distribution and I'm giving people cocaine in little blue boxes with white ribbons on it, I mean, that would certainly, they would have a good argument that that's tarnishing or diluting their brand. So it's always going to be a case-by-case basis. And we always go back to the policy reason on intellectual property. We want to protect somebody's original ideas. We want to protect somebody's work product. We want to protect something, the branding, imagery, creative process that someone has put effort into. We want to protect that. And that's really the question. So that's dilution. Let's look at infringement for a minute. Infringement is when somebody copies it to a substantial degree. And think that would be like, you know, the purses you see for sale on the streets in New York that are copying whatever I can't name a high-end purse, but ladies help me out. Well, what do they sell up there? Louis Vuitton? Is that one? Chanel, there you go. All right. I shouldn't have asked just the ladies then. Yeah, so that's when you're copying it or using it to another degree. I mean, you are, in an infringement case, you are trying to piggyback off of the original brand. You either want somebody to think that you are that brand, or you want somebody to think that you're associated with it. You're piggybacking off of what the goodwill or the name or the quality or the reputation that they have. That'd be straight up infringement. So not only can you trademark a logo, you could trademark a name, you can trademark a slogan, you can also trademark what they call trade dress, your packaging, the interior of your restaurant. So like that Tiffany blue box, trade dress that's considered trade dress. That would be protected. The Coca-Cola's bottle, that green bottle, the shape of their bottle with the way the ridges are, that would be considered trade dress, and that would be protected as unique to Coca-Cola. Which, by the way, did anybody see Jeopardy last night? Y'all are too young. The last question was about intellectual property, and it was about the Coke bottle. It said something about what company, when they first debuted their product, it came in a packet, or it came in a container that was, and the color was Georgia green. So I never knew that the color of that Coke bottle is named Georgia green, which was kind of cool. But that gave it away. Everybody got the right answer. All right, so trade dress, yep. That's the image, the overall appearance of a product. It's protected just like a trademark is. That's a good question. Yeah, the appearance of the. I wonder if. So I don't know if they could trade dress, if they could protect the color, because that's available. I mean, you know, color should be available to everybody, but there's something that they may be able to do. I don't know. I'm going to look into that. I'll look that up and we'll talk about it Thursday. Again, I think colors are going to be too hard to trademark. But if you can, the Nike swoosh is a great example of trademark. I mean, that's about as fanciful and distinctive as they come. If you can take a color and make your packaging the way that you've displayed it or designed it, it could be. So let me take a different tack on that. If I owned a restaurant and the theme of my restaurant was that everything in there is orange, a certain color of orange, then, I mean, you walk in and everything's orange, from the tables to the walls to the floors. and it's a national chain, that might be a trade dress that's protected from somebody else opening up another restaurant and putting everything orange inside. So it's not necessarily the color, it's the way the color is used or displayed. That's what I'm trying to say. So it could be that there's something about Reese's packaging in the way that they've used orange that they could have protected. Yeah, I mean, like Tiffany's blue box, that color itself is not necessarily protected. I could use that blue color in my bags that I, put people's product in. It's that it's on a box with that white ribbon around it, or what. It's the way that they've used it. So, but you've piqued my interest on the Reese's thing, so I'm going to look into that. But yeah, it's a good question. We talked about counterfeiting a little. Counterfeiting is a shade different than infringement. Infringement was when somebody was just using your logo or using something that's substantially similar. Counterfeit means we're trying to make the exact same thing and we're trying to fool you into thinking it's real. So yes, it is a form of infringement, I guess, because we're using the exact same logo. But typically infringement would be, I'm not trying to trick you consumer into thinking this is an Apple computer. I'm just trying to trick you into thinking this is associated with an Apple company or that Apple's selling it or something like that. That makes sense. Do you have a question? Oh, I thought you had a question. All right, just want to make sure. So a trade name, part or all of a business's name, that can also be protected. And again, it would be subject to kind of that hierarchy we talked about at the beginning. The more unique, the more it doesn't have an independent meaning, the more it's associated with that product, service, or company, the more likely it would be to be protected. All right, that is all I want to talk about for trademarks. Anybody have any questions on trademarks before we move to patents? Yes. Why can't the law apply to the foreign counterfeiters? It could apply. Well, Louis Vuitton went and sued that Korean person. The main reason that it can't apply to the foreign counterfeiters is that they're not subject to our laws. The person in Germany is not. They're not operating in America. I suppose that I don't know. There might be some ways. If you did, so I think what let's say that I think that what Louis Vuitton had to do, let's go back to them for a second. They had to go and use Korean law against the Korean business. So Korea has trademark laws. They just had to sue them under trademark laws in Korea. They couldn't do it under American law. So like a Korean company can't come over here and sue you, Des, for trademark infringement of Korean law. You don't live there. They don't have jurisdiction over you. You could not be sued in Korea. You could be sued here for violating U.S. copyright law. The Korean company could come over here and sue you under our law. They just couldn't sue you under Korean law here. So that's what Louis Vuitton, they had to go over and sue them under Korean law. Now, if you're in if somebody's using your logo in a country that doesn't have copyright law, then you're not going to be able to go and sue them in that country for violation of a law that doesn't exist. Now, to your question, let's say that somebody in another country is knocking off your product and they try to sell it over here. You can get an injunction. You can prevent them from doing that here. You have remedies under U.S. law. You just don't have. You have remedies under U.S. law for anything done here. You have remedies under the law of the other country for anything done there. That makes sense. Once they try to sell it here, then you can enforce U.S. law against them here. Confuse y'all enough? That's a good question. All right, so moving on to patents. So a patent, that gives an inventor the exclusive right to make, use, sell an invention for a period of time. For an invention, it's 20 years. For a design, it's 14 years. And then you can renew your patent periodically after that. So what can be patented? Well, a whole lot of things. The questions that we look at to decide what can be patented, the sort of the factors that we use are listed in your outline. It's got to be something that is genuine. So you can't patent something that somebody else has already invented. Novel, it's new, it's not previously disclosed. It's got to be useful. It operates to perform its intended purpose in the real world. And it's got to be not obvious in light of current technology. So I think an easier way to look at what can be patented is to look at what can't be patented. So we cannot patent the laws of nature. Like, I couldn't get a patent on daylight. I couldn't get a patent on leaves turning red in the fall. I couldn't get a patent on the daffodils blooming in the wintertime. Natural phenomena, abstract ideas. I can't patent love or hate. It's an interesting idea, getting a patent on hate. Terrible. So those can't be patented. But any other invention or novel idea that you have could be patented. The design for a product, the way that something is manufactured, the way something is put together. I was going to say a formula, but I have to be careful about that because we can't patent math. You cannot patent, the question was, can you not patent knowledge? It has to be a unique application of knowledge. So I cannot patent 5 plus 5, but I could patent software that takes numbers and does something unique with them in a way that only I've figured out how to do. But if what I was trying to patent was just a mathematical calculation, then I probably couldn't do that. Can AI be patented? That is a great question. I don't know, because I know that like algorithms cannot be patented. So I'm not sure about AI. I need to look up that too. So the two things, that's a great question. The two things were AI and rhesus. I'll have answers for those on Thursday. Anything else that I said I was going to look up? yeah. Can AI patent its own stuff? Can they turn around? Yeah, they're going to. Yeah, that is a slippery slope. Yeah, they'll create their own law for it. It's pretty scary. So again, I'm not giving you a lot of guidelines on what can be patented because most ideas can be patented. Let's look at infringement then. That is using someone else's idea, using another idea or anything that's been patented. So if a firm makes, uses, sells another's patented design, product, or process without permission, that'd be infringement. It's pretty costly to sue for patent infringement because it's highly technical. You know, if I have if I've designed a machine that has all these component parts. I mean, I'm going to need experts in this particular field, and then the defendant's going to have experts in that particular field, and we're going to get into the nitty gritty of comparing these two machines and how they work and whether or not that really is a copy of what I've done. I mean, that's highly technical. So it can be difficult and costly to do, but necessary if a firm or a patent holder wants to protect their patent. What people do a lot is, instead of suing, they choose to monetize the infringement by just working out a licensing deal with the person who's supposedly infringing on their patent. I'm not going to sue you to stop doing it, but if you pay me X amount per year, then I will allow you to use my design. Sometimes that could be more profitable than shutting them down and protecting your monopoly or your sole use of whatever that design or idea is. Just depends. Because things like, I think I already mentioned this, but things like software and technology can be patented, that is a really complex litigation if you get into it. I think that, well, I know Apple and Samsung were going at it for a number of years in relation to Apple's design patents, and I don't know if that ever got settled. I guess I'll look at that too. I'll make a note of that. So, all right, let's think about that for a second. Arm & Hammer cleaning products versus an all-purpose cleaner.
So like Arm & Hammer uses baking soda. They were known for.
Oh, that they use baking soda in their cleaning products. So the question is then, if they patented that, would that prohibit anybody else from using baking soda in their cleaning products? It could. But remember too, when I said at the beginning that patents only last for a certain amount of time. And then they open up for competition. Anybody can use it. So that's why you see like drug companies will get a patent on their drug formulation. And during the time that they own the patent before it expires and goes public, so to speak, nobody else can formulate that drug. But once it does, then anybody could make that drug and they would lose their exclusivity on it. So probably I would say that Arm & Hammer could have protected the use of baking soda in cleaning products for a certain period of time, but I'm sure that's long expired. You can renew, I don't know that you can renew them like you can trademarks. And so if our policy reason for trademark law, intellectual property laws to protect creativity, the fact that they expire and you lose that protection, that the policy interest in that is promote competition, promote not have monopolies on stuff. You get some competing interests going on there. But I do not think that you cannot just renew your patent automatically in perpetuity. Yeah, you do you lose it at that point. You lose your protection at that point. So Coke's secret formula, that they would lose patent protection on it, but it's secret. So nobody knows what it is. That's a good question. That's a very good question. Is Coke's secret formula patented? It might not be patented for that reason. I don't understand how that could still be secret after all this time.
But they can use like licensing for other companies.
They could, as I drink Coke. That's another good question. I'm gonna look at that too. They didn't. Well, I said I was going to look at all these things. I should just let Josh Look it up for us, or ask. So they could sue because it was theft of a trade secret. They just couldn't sue under patent infringement. So yeah, things like I think we get to it in a second. Yeah, we're going to talk about trade secrets at the very last. That's the very last thing in our outline. So let me move to, unless there are any more questions on patents, then let's move to copyright. All right, so I'm not sure I mentioned this when we're talking about trademarks. Trademarks have to be registered. You register a trademark with the federal government. Copyright, on the other hand, you never have to register a copyright. Copyright is automatically granted to the author or the originator of certain literary or artistic works. As soon as they're created, they enjoy copyright protection. So if I write a novel, I don't have to register it with the federal government to protect it from being ripped off by somebody else. Same thing goes for music, paintings, drawings, photographs, sculptures, choreography, a certain dance, sequence of dance moves. I think even your outline, I always crack up at this, but it talks about like pantomimes. Like I think of a mime like having a certain routine that could be that enjoys copyright protection. Literary work, musical work, dramatic work, pantomimes, choreographic work, pictorial, graphic, sculptural work, films, audio visual works, sound recordings, architectural works, computer software, all that is copyrighted. So that's a great, I'm glad you brought that up. He's talking about musicians and chord progressions. So I did assign you an article for Thursday, and it's on the blurred lines litigation. And it talks a lot about how all music is derivative in one form or fashion. We have a limited number of notes, chords. It's the way that you put them together. But what's interesting is, does something enjoy copyright protection? I would think it'd be really hard. You couldn't copyright one note. Two notes, probably not. Three notes, what about the, is it T-Mobile that goes da-na-na-na-na? That's protected. That's probably like two notes, but it's the sequencing of it. Susie. No, you're good. You're good. I understand. Yep. We will see you Thursday. So, yeah, all music is derivative in some form or fashion. So that article is really interesting, and we're going to talk about that on Thursday about kind of how that works with music and copyright infringement. Yeah, it could be. That's. I think sampling is protect. I mean, I don't think you can do that without permission because you're using. I mean, you're using that. It's recognizable as something else. The question just gets into how unique is that? You know, how much do we associate it with that other work? Like I know at one time there was litigation on Stairway to Heaven. I think there was a chord progression in Stairway to Heaven that was litigated. Yeah, that's right. That they claimed they had ripped that off from them. That they did not infringe on somebody's copyright. I can't remember that either. Yeah, that's right. It lasted forever and ever. But when you do your research on for your assignment this week, if you're interested in the music copyright infringement, go that route. You've got a lot of different ways you can go on this. So if that interests you, maybe pick something having to do with music. But yeah, all that it is fascinating how they go about evaluating those cases. So that takes us to trade secrets. Let me back up for a second. I'm sorry, on copyright. There is an exception in copyright infringement called a fair use exception. So the reproduction of copyrighted material, it might be permitted without compensating the originator in certain situations. One would be like commercial versus nonprofit. If I want to use somebody else's copyright material and I'm making money off of it, that's not a fair use. If I'm a nonprofit, that might be, maybe I want to use somebody's quote as part of promotional material that my foundation sends out. That might be okay. If I'm writing a book review and I want to include a paragraph of the book, but I'm doing it as part of a book review or a music review or a movie review, that would not be copyright infringement. That would fall under the fair use exception. If I profit off the review, I still am protected because I am reviewing. See what the difference in that is. I mean, yeah, I'm getting paid to review movies, right? But I'm not stealing their work. It's not the same as me using some of their work as part of my own creative or for my own. Well, I don't know. I'm not saying this the right way. There's a certain amount. Here's how I'd say it. If you write something or you make a movie or a song and you put it out for public consumption, it's fair to expect that somebody may write a review of it. It wouldn't be workable to say that I've written this song and nobody can do a review of it. I mean, there's a little bit of give and take there, that by putting something out into the public realm, it's going to be critiqued or subject to criticism or review, and that we feel like that would be a fair use. It's a fair trade-off for me putting that out into the public. Does that make sense?
If it's someone of like a celebrity, if a celebrity did a review on someone local, local person really has no profit around it.
I see. If there's an imbalance between, if a person uses copyright as part of the fair use, but they end up profiting more than the originator, that's a really interesting question. So I still think it falls under the fair use exception, but I'm trying to think of an example of how that would actually be. But that's a really good question. You know, me, little old Tom, paints a painting that hangs in the lobby of the business school. I'm just an amateur hobbyist painter, and somebody famous comes in and does a review of it and puts it on their blog, and they make all kinds of money for that. That is interesting. I think it still probably falls under fair use, but that does push the line of what we feel may be fair or not. What do y'all think about that? Could be. What if he trashes it, my painting, and you know? I like the way you're thinking, Mr. Ross. You may be going to law school after all. It just depends. I mean, that's a really interesting juxtaposition of the fair use doctrine. All right, so let me finish up on trade secrets. So the thing like McDonald's special sauce, Zax's sauce, the 11 herbs and spices at Kentucky Fried Chicken. Those are things that might not be patented or copyrighted or trademarked, but they still enjoy protection as trade secrets. They're anything that makes an individual company unique and that would have value to a competitor, like customer lists. I can't go and trademark my customer list. That's not patentable and it's not copyright, but it's trade secret of mine and it's protected. Business plans, research and development, pricing information, marketing techniques, things like that would represent trade secrets and they would be protected. Now, if they're going to be protected to the degree that I have taken reasonable steps to protect them. I mean, if I'm putting the 11 herbs and spices out on the internet, then I can't claim that's a trade secret anymore because I've made it unsecret. So the law would look at my actions as well as the actions of the person that I'm claiming is stealing it from me or using it in an unauthorized way. So that's a very high-level overview of intellectual property law. Trademarks, patents, copyright, trade secrets, trade dress. Your assignment for Thursday is to find an example of a dispute involving one of those things. The actual assignment itself spells out exactly what you should have in your little thing. Again, don't overthink this. This is not a long assignment at all. And then I want you to have it, you don't have to have it turned in by Thursday, but I want you to have it done by Thursday because I'm going to go around and we'll each talk about your example. Then we're going to talk about the blurred lines case briefly. And then we're going to talk about your final exam project. So, any questions on where we are? Yes, sir.
Which section of law is
Intellectual property law. IP. All right. I'll see y'all Thursday.